Hi, welcome to the Life by 8 podcast. My name is Beck.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Paul, and today we're going to be talking about our environmental pillar, which is all about the spaces that we occupy regularly, whether it be at home, at work, and how those spaces are set up to set you up for, having a productive life rather than having a space that makes you stress out or causes you anxiety. So having a look at how all those spaces make you feel.
Have you ever walked into like your kid's toy room and absolutely lost your mind? Or the dishes in the sink that have been there for days?
A bad one for me is a dirty bathroom. I hate a dirty bathroom.
Trigger.
Massive trigger.
I am way less productive when there is paperwork all over my desk.
Yeah.
I know that when Paul and I first met, he came and did some work with me when I was working for a catering company. He's like, why do you have all this sense of order at your workplace but not at home? Which it's true. So, the places that we go into, the car, everything, it affects us in more ways than people really give it credit for.
100%. I can say that I'm definitely a very clean person. I know that order and having things in certain spaces really helps me on a productivity side of things. It's important for me to have things like in sight, otherwise they're out of mind.
Yeah.
And it's all these little things that, as you said before, they add to your productivity, they remove stress, and they can make your life just flow so much easier.
Yeah.
So should we maybe give a few examples of what we're talking about with some clients that have done our workshops?
Well, I think that they would probably be more of the solutions based, but if we
True.
start with going deeper into, what falls into the environmental pillar in Life by 8. So we know we talk about the house that we live in or the space that we live in.
Your work.
And that can be whether that's you work in a truck, you work in a school, you work in an office, a gym, your workplace where you spend a lot of your time.
It's just setting up those spaces that, in a way that works for you. When you need something, it's there for you. You don't have to scratch around looking for it and stressing yourself out.
And one thing I want to advocate for is there's a difference between having order and being clean. And there is, in interior design, we talk about minimalist and maximalist. You don't have to be a minimalist with nothing and everywhere and just whiteness and space. Because for some people like me, that doesn't work. I don't feel inspired. It feels cold. And maximalist and having things around you that bring you joy that you love can have the same result for you as having a very sparse space can have for somebody else. So separating cleanliness outside of order is something that I think we need to sort of explore a bit more when we talk about the environmental pillar, because we walk into a space and we use language like, this place is, it feels dirty to me, or it feels gross, it's cluttered. And that can be true. But somebody else can walk into that same space, that same shop, that same whatever, and be, I feel so inspired and I love being in here.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about your own environmental pillar, what does the environments, or what do you need them to look like for you and to feel, and the energy that we all talk about, for you to feel the most productive or together and, acing life?
I think in a nutshell, realistically, if your environments are set up right, then they're essentially just a reflection of you. The things that bring you joy, the things that you love. There's even research coming out about this now that, we can create our own happiness by enhancing our environments in ways that are meaningful to us. Like we might put plants around, we might have certain pictures painting, we might have certain smells, scents, we could be playing music in that particular environment. For me, I'm definitely more on the clean side. I wouldn't say minimalistic. Organized.
Yeah.
I walk into your home, Beck, and I love the maximalist feel to it. but there's still a level of it here that feels organized. So I'm very attracted to organized and very clean and simple. Everything's laid out. I know exactly where things are. That seems to create the least amount of anxiety for me and allows me to function at a high level.
Yeah, I think I come from that organised kind of background as well. The house that I grew up in, my parents were, if something was out of place, it was always tidied up and back into place, and it was quite an organised environment. And it's funny because Rebecca and I, when we met, had probably two different sort of views when it comes to the environmental pillar, and we've over the years had to sort of compromise either way and come to a sort of middle ground, I guess, because I was more on that minimalist, and Rebecca likes to collect things just to remind her of places she's been, and it's a meeting in the middle. And now I walk into our home and I look around, and it's a reminder of our life, yeah.
And can I just say that middle ground, like, it can be hard to come to at times because we can be very biased in how we see things.
That's
it's
right.
like, no, I need things to be like this. And the friction that can cause in your marriage or your relationship, those little stories that build up, and you get resentful because they're not living the way you like your environment to be. But I 100% agree, there's always a middle ground, and there's no complete right or wrong way to do things.
That's right.
And just, finding that, especially if you're in a relationship,
Yeah.
you need to find that middle ground. If you're the same, easy, but if you're not, well, then you have to create that compromise.
And then you chuck children in there as well, and it's a whole different ball game because you've got another 1, 2, 3, 5 kids and personalities to adjust to, and their needs. And I know for us right now, it is about understanding how our boys live and show up, and what makes them happy, what triggers them and their emotions. And I think we had a conversation even just today about what our environment needs to look like in the next 5 years as the boys grow up and edge closer to teenagehood, and what we need now that we understand a bit more about ourselves. And I think being really intentional with your environments and getting really specific with knowing what triggers you, why, getting curious as to why things trigger you.
Definitely.
And doing the work to either work through that or to redesign your life that you don't have to be in those places that trigger you. So, for some people, for some children on the autism spectrum, going into a shopping centre that is loud can be really, really detrimental to their development, to their emotional regulation and their feelings of self-worth. But if you keep forcing it, you might eventually numb them to it. But do you have to do that just because you think that that's what we have to do in normal society? Or can you just take them at times that it's quieter, or not take them at all if they don't want to? Like, adjusting our environment. So, like, I know that shopping centres for you can get overwhelming at times.
Yeah, definitely. And like, I'm in a slightly different spot with my children, a bit younger, but at my stage, they are young, and mess is just a thing. That they're at that age, and I very much want to instill good habits into them to like take care of their spaces, to take care of themselves. But I'm also in a place where I have to just watch and see what type of person they're becoming, in who they are. That might not match how I want to keep my room, and I have to be very careful that I don't transfer that over to them. But yeah, in terms of what you were saying before, like I definitely at times, if walk into like a really busy shopping centre, particularly somewhere like Carindale, there's a lot going on, sights, sounds, different patterns and stuff. Overstimulation is quite prevalent in my life. So it's a fine line though, hey, because I have had times where I've thought, I'm just going to adjust the way I do things to suit overcoming that anxiety, but it's not always, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not always feasible to go at certain times. So how then can I set myself up to be comfortable in these environments too, if I have to be in them, if you can't avoid them completely? Because
some
there's
people
times you can't avoid environments completely. So what do you do?
absolutely, and the great thing about technology, all the things that we have available to us, and when we become self-aware, it's like if you know you're going into a shopping center and it overstimulates you, wear earbuds.
So good.
Put your Apple Apple AirPods in.
Yeah.
Just get your 50-cent foam ones. There are things that you can do to really help
100%.
you in
And
those
even
situations.
at big centres like that, simple little things that I have done not to avoid them completely at times is just park closer to the shop that I need to go to.
Yeah.
So that I don't have to be exposed to the craziness of it too long. But yeah, it's just about finding those little things, isn't it, to deal with those environments that challenge us sometimes.
A lot of people have, they turned 18 and they started going to pubs and clubs, and alcohol became part of, the social pillar element. But there are environments where you can go to that makes you feel unsafe. So it might be walking into a club and going, something doesn't feel right here. And knowing that it's okay to leave those environments when you pick up and you're aware of those energies, whether that's somebody's house, whether that is, I'm using the club because and pubs, because a lot of people right now are in social situations and having to go to events in environments that trigger them. We talk about the behaviors that turn up in those environments, whether it's we drink because that helps us feel like we can cope more, or that we're going to, our grandmother's house or our, stepfather's house, and we don't feel comfortable with them, or it's got memories. There's so many different triggers when it comes to environments.
Absolutely.
And it's really, really getting curious about why things can feel the way that they do when we go to certain spaces. So I think one of the key tips that I would give to people and our clients when I'm talking about the environmental pillar is just get really curious whenever you're going into anywhere for a while. Take stock for a month. You don't have to write a journal about it if you don't want to, but be aware of how you feel when you walk into that petrol station compared to that one. Or when you do catch up with family, or when you do go to certain restaurants, or when you do go to the shops with or without children, designing your life. Like for me, I know I enjoy grocery shopping without my children.
Yeah.
I predominantly design my life so that I don't have to do it with them. And if I had to, I would order online.
Yeah.
Because the trigger and the stress that it causes me, partly them, but me, is not worth the impact that's going to have for hours after.
Totally.
But I am aware of that.
Yeah.
Without being aware of that, I wouldn't know. So I wouldn't adjust. But in these modern times, our generation has the opportunity to really be more purposeful about environments. We don't have to be in places.
Totally. And it comes back to that power of choice. Like we have choice in everything, and as you were saying before, like you can walk into a pub and feel that energy, you're free to leave, and safety always comes first. So we should be able to feel safe and secure in our environments as much as possible, because that will foster our growth. And we need to be in those places and less around the ones that trigger us or upset us. Like it's not worth taking your kids shopping and then not being able to show up as the best mum possible for 3 hours after, because you've just been blown off the hinge by all that overstimulation and stress. Save yourself the trouble, make the choice to set things up in a way that is going to support you and the people around you.
Yeah, I think we mentioned the other day about that self-awareness of this new generation coming through. So people are starting to look and be aware of these things and act on them and set their life up in a way that maybe past generations were a bit stuck in their ways, and I have to go here at this time even though it makes me feel, not so good. Now we're sort of starting to be a bit more self-aware and, do these things.
And it comes with each generation has their own judgment on that, whether it's, the older generation say, this generation, the young generation is so selfish, but the young generation doesn't want to walk on eggshells anymore.
Exactly. And
we're not putting up with abuse because we have to.
Well, and we don't want to live with this festering undercurrent of resent that's ruining all of our relationships around us because we're doing things by obligation, and that we feel like we have to be, because otherwise, you'll feel guilty or there'll be a guilt trip happening. Like, I don't think it's selfish in any way. I think people are just learning how to set better boundaries for themselves and how to honor how they actually feel, rather than just ignoring that intuition and ignoring that internal state just to please the people around them.
There was that Mark Mason book, I think it is, The Art of Not Giving a Fuck, or whatever it is.
Great book.
And I read it, and there's another one about the subtle art or whatever by somebody else. And, I genuinely dislike baby showers. Like, I do not give a fuck about them. And so after reading those books, I don't go. Because I don't want to.
And that's
it triggers,
enough. And that's enough.
That's enough. And I'm in a process at the moment about learning about not having to justify everything.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to explain to people why I don't like baby showers. There's lots of reasons, but I don't want to have to explain that to every single person.
They're only going to have their judgments on those things anyway. Like most people, you give them the reasons as to why, and then they may come back with you with something else anyway. So having that confidence to literally just say, no, I just don't feel like doing that, is enough. But it's really, really hard. And especially if you've grown up in a home where, you maybe have had to deal with, big emotions of adults, and you've had to people please, and you've had to bend and fit in and all those sorts of things. Saying no initially can be really hard. It can make you feel intensely guilty, like you've done something wrong, but you've literally done nothing wrong. You've just said no, and you've just honored the fact that, when that opportunity presented itself, your first thought was no, that doesn't feel good for me. And that's okay. There is nothing wrong with that. You're allowed to say no.
But a disclaimer on that is you can't then get angry if people say no to you.
No, totally not.
So it's that setting boundaries, but then also
Yes.
respecting boundaries back. Because lots of people are they get invited to all these places, they keep saying no, 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 and then they get shitty when their friends stop inviting them.
100%. Yeah. I think people who are, I guess, emotionally healthy, let's just say that, and can set boundaries well, also will respect people's boundaries. When they hear no, they won't feel the need to open that can up and go, well, why? What's the reason? They can just go, oh, no worries, we'll catch up another day or something of that nature. So it is a two-way street, 100%, big time.
And yeah, for me, those social gatherings are hard.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of work I've got to do on them because they're overwhelming for me. So I don't have a problem with the shops really. I may have a problem sometimes at really large events, but for me it's the social etiquette that's required in a social setting of friends or my children's friends or whatever it is. And I want to try really hard, but depending on what else is going on in life, that can be really overwhelming that I can't cope. So that's when Paul might take the kids, or one of the friends would take them. It's really just being aware, because I can go into meltdowns for 3 days after, into darkness after that social. I wouldn't call it social anxiety. I still don't know what it is because I'm exploring it at the moment. But I know that certain environments trigger it that lasts longer after.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think if we go if we want to bring it back to sort of more surface level stuff, it's understanding your productivity. If you want to use your example before,
Which one about
the pool?
Oh right, yeah. So I have a clock on the veranda at our house, and it's one that when I'm in the pool, I can look up and see. Okay, I've got 10 minutes before I've got to go and get the kids or whatever, and that clock has the battery has run dead, and I've been staring at a clock on the wall for probably a month, and that gives you anxiety about not just knowing the time and not being able to keep up with those commitments. Just puts that little bit more stress that doesn't need to be there. So it's a very small thing of changing the battery in a clock, having one there. I know what time it is, and yeah,
it isn't so
stress out
funny.
a bit less.
Sometimes those little things that we
It's tiny.
procrastinate on for so long, when we actually just give it that 5 minutes of proper attention that it needs, it makes your life fuckloads easier.
That's it.
Like,
Yeah.
like it's game changing. But sometimes we can feel so stuck in being like, I know I have to do that, but you don't end up doing it. And then you've got to get out of the pool in that case, and you've got to check your front. Like,
Yeah.
you're making things harder for yourself
Yeah.
by not doing the simple next best thing in that moment that you
Yeah.
know is probably going to be good for you,
Yeah.
good for your environment.
Another one for me is, I start work quite early in the mornings, and my family's all asleep when I go to work. And the night before, when I am organised, I'll get my uniform ready, just have it set aside, know where my keys are, know where my wallet is, and have my bag ready. It saves me tramping around the house at 4 o'clock in the morning while other people are trying to sleep, turning lights on, trying to find things. So just having that couple of minutes before you go to bed, okay, everything's there, ready to go. I wake up, I can be a lot less stressed in the morning.
Well, I was the same as you, Paul. Even like those early mornings, being a PT and like getting into countless fights about making breakfast in the kitchen at 4 a.m. and then it hit me like a light bulb one day that I was like, I could do this at work. I could eat my breakfast at work.
That's it.
And I started making my protein oats, and I could have the microwave as loud as I wanted it. I could bang around, people were already up, and the kids and the rest of the family were sound asleep, and that was that middle ground again, in that environment, in making sure that like I wasn't disrupting their sleep.
Yep.
And yeah, so
it's just a little twig, isn't it?
It's the tiniest things, but like I said, once you do them, you're like, oh, this is so much better.
But everything is possible, whether you are a single parent with children or you're not earning as much as you want to. Like, everything has a solution, but sometimes we have to get creative, and it can be the littlest changes that you make in your environment that actually make huge impact on your life and those around you. So like we've had a client who couldn't nobody wanted to feed the animals because it was too hard. The food was so far away, and just by simply, after doing our workshop, moving food closer to where the animals actually eat.
Yeah.
It seems so simple, but it was like revolutionary.
Totally.
For them.
I had that one in my car that time. It's slightly different, but a car is an environment where I occupy quite a lot. And I was finding myself at the petrol station more than I wanted to be, and I was filling up with little increments each time, which meant that like I was hating going to the petrol station. I wasn't enjoying being in my car anymore. And the minute I decided to put a full tank in each time, that all changed. It was like, I like being in my car again. I can go anywhere in this car because I have a full tank of fuel. So my car became a positive environment again. The fuel station didn't piss me off as much.
Yeah.
And again, it's just those like tiny little, I think you said in the workshops that we do back, like, if you're rushing out the door with kids and they need to brush their hair, put the hairbrush near the door.
Mm-hmm.
Right next to the door.
Just because it's in the bathroom in movies doesn't mean that that's where it has to be in your house.
And that's that rigidity coming in again, where people are like, that's a bathroom item. Yeah.
And I don't know if it's rigidity, but it's just like, well, that's just what's always been done.
Yeah.
And talking about like the petrol, the fuel station example is like the same as the grocery example of like, if you're putting in $20 each time, like eventually, right, like if you can get your financial pillar sorted, you should have enough to be able to put enough petrol in all at one time. So getting yourself to that point, so even if you don't have enough to do it, getting yourself to a point where you can put in $80 at a time, you actually probably save money, because for many people, they go into the servo and buy something while they're in there, right? So if you're going for $20 at a time, you are doing, you're going 4 times instead of once. And if you're buying something little each time you're there, you're spending more when you think you're putting in less and less. Like $20 at a time, I'm fine, I can do this. But you're spending more.
Yeah.
It's the same as they talk about doing your groceries. Like, don't go every day.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
Weekly.
And that's when you can see the pillars overlap. Like, I mean, you and I obviously both know that was a byproduct of me sorting my financial pillars.
Yes. Yeah.
A direct byproduct, but then that directly influenced my environments too.
And I use the petrol station as a trigger now for me, where, because I can get overwhelmed. I'm in my car going from center to center, place to place. So I bought small garbage bags. I have them in my center console, and going to put fuel in is a trigger for me to look for rubbish in the car fill up one of those small bags and get it out, because they have rubbish bins there for that reason. And so for me, you know, that means I get back into my car and it's like I can breathe. I feel good. It doesn't feel overwhelming. But using things in your everyday as your trigger to help keep your environmental pillar sorted and organized. So like, I mean, home as well, you know, Fridays we're trying to do, like, I try to make sure all the receipts are gathered and sent to the right people, whether that's me or our PA doing it, but just trying to utilize those little moments and triggers that can help you make everything better.
What about enlisting the help of others to, you know, clean your environment, for example? If you're in a position where your financial pillar is sorted and maybe getting some assistance with cleaning your home, if a clean home is important to you, getting into those corners of the shower that you don't like, actually getting down on your hands and knees. Now, I bring this up, but it took me a long while to actually warm to this idea. I was always of the opinion that you know, we had to do it ourselves. And if you know Rebecca and I and Chris, everyone, we're all busy. You know, we've got a few things going on, all by choice, because we want to try a whole bunch of things in life. But then having to find the time to do those other items, it's been really helpful for us to just get a cleaner in once a fortnight to do those things that you know, that I would have had to do otherwise.
The deeper cleaning,
the deeper cleaning type stuff.
Yeah.
So just adding that little person to your entourage has been really helpful for us.
100%, big time.
And it's not, and there is privilege in that, and I am grateful for the fact that we've designed our life and worked hard to be able to do that. And it has made a big shift in our relationship over the last few years that we've had them, and the ladies we have are amazing, and we love them. And like, you know, the presents that I left for them last week, I am so grateful for them, and I really hope, and I always tell them how important the work they are doing, because society, you know, we have certain jobs are worth more than others. But for me, people who have cleaning jobs don't realize the impact they have on people's lives.
It's massive.
It's huge, and they are worth every dollar. So people who argue about, you know, cleaners should only be $25 an hour or whatever, it's like, fuck no. Like, they're actually worth whatever we are paying them.
Totally.
And I mean, I know what they're paying them, but I don't want to say that out loud. But don't just look at things for price.
It's beyond that dollar value. Hey, like, you can even bring it back to, you know, people gardening. You know, if you don't want to mow your lawn and you have someone come and keep those lawns tidy, and that makes you feel good, it's invaluable. Like,
it's where pillars come across. You know, you've got your environmental, but also if we're looking at your financial pillar, and are you spending things on stuff that you don't really need or want? Like, it's about lining up your life, looking at the things that you find important, and going after those things. And that's what we've done.
Like you were talking about things needing to be like in view, right? There are so many people, and I am one of them, who have bought 2-3 of the same thing because I didn't know, I couldn't see or find the other thing, and so I bought one, and then I find the other one. It's like, now I've got 3 of the same thing. It's really the environmental pillar. The more order you can put into that space and design and move furniture to the places that are going to serve how your family operates and lives, the better things are going to be financially, because you're not going to be buying 2 or 3 of the same thing because you know where to find that thing.
I think it really shoots across every pillar. Hey, emotionally, everything feels better. There's less disagreements in the house. Everything is just a lot more fluid, and you're not spending time on little misdemeanors that you don't have to be butting your head against every single day, just by making those tiny little shifts.
And that's why the framework for Life by 8 is so good, because yes, everything, you can't have anything without the others, but you can start to really silo off. So if you can only, like, if you're feeling overwhelmed, usually the first place to go to is environment, because that, if you can get order, that's something you can control. And then if you can get the overwhelm down, then you start to be able to look at your emotional pillar or to look at your financial pillar, because you can find the receipts that you need for your tax, for your accountant, or you can get that refund or return that dress that you ordered online that doesn't fit in time. Because if you have set your environments to have some type of procedure and order, you are going to save money. You are going to be less stressed, emotional pillar. You are going to want more people around, maybe. It depends on who you are, but you will feel more comfortable to invite people around because you feel like your environment is in order and not embarrassing, or whatever you want to attach to that feeling. But you start to look at all the other, like your occupational pillar. If you work from home, which a lot of people do now, that crossover of really designing your environment that separates work from the rest of your life somehow. You may live in a 1-bedroom unit and you can't have a separate office, but what can you do when work is over? So like I know with Jay Shetty and him and his wife, at 6 o'clock she puts on the diffuser. She does these little triggers in their environment that helps them wind down, know that work is over, and prepare for the night together, the sleep hygiene, all of that. So it's like being really, really intentional in your environments. And if you are feeling overwhelmed with everything, I know we talk about physical pillar and the movement movement, sleep, and nutrition. They are actually fundamentals, right? But if you're overwhelmed in the moment, start with your environment.
Totally. And just that little bit of a shift. Sometimes I know in the past, if I have been a little bit sort of scattered or down, actually, tapping back into your environment, being like, hey, what can I do within here right now that's going to make things a little bit easier for me, actually makes you feel so much better in that moment. Like, it's a huge shift for me. As simple as sometimes being like, I'm just going to put fresh bedding on my bed. I'm going to freshen it up. I'm going to make my bed in the morning. The littlest things, right? But I really appreciate in the evening coming home, walking into a room, I'm like, it doesn't look like a mess. It looks clean. It looks welcoming, ready for me to, light my candle, put on the music that I want to listen to, read my book. Whereas I know that if I had rushed out the door and left that bed messy, I know how I'm going to feel coming back and looking at it.
100%.
I know it. I know it. So there are mornings where I'm like, I don't really want to make it because I'm tired. I just want to run out the door. But I choose to, and I make that choice every day because I know that 2-minute little decision to do that benefits me way more in return.
That's right.
And anything can be justified. So I know Paul likes the bed being made, but I'm like, oh no, don't make it because the sheets need to air out.
And that's
literally like a justification, right? That's like anything, any excuse, anything can be justified.
I've literally heard that it's more unhygienic to make your bed every day.
There is science behind it, but I used to use it as an excuse, right? So I didn't have to do it. But it's having consideration for the other as well.
Exactly.
So, but if it's not made, Paul's learnt to he's learnt to be curious as to something must have happened this morning.
Yes.
Instead of going, why didn't you? Which a lot of people do, right?
So you can go straight to blaming, you're lazy, why don't you make the bed?
Yeah,
but
you
hang
don't
on a
appreciate.
minute.
You don't appreciate me, all that sort of stuff.
Two boys who can be super crazy in the mornings, and it could have been one of those days where just keeping them under control was a full-time thing. Getting lunches ready, getting them into a uniform, and getting them out the door. That can take up all of the time that you have. So.
And that is a practice too. That art of walking in and being like, this is not the way I like my environment, but then not being reactive.
And I've had to work on that.
I have too. I have had to, in many cases, go, okay, the morning could have been chaotic, right? It could have just been hightailing out the door. And on the priority list, making the bed was just not it. And that doesn't mean that person doesn't appreciate me, doesn't respect me, doesn't like things neat, and that they're just messy. These are the stories we tell ourselves again.
Go into these stories,
absolutely. And I think, but also like some days I genuinely could not be fucked. But there are so many relationships out there and so many people who, you know, I know so many of my friends who, you know, they stay at home with the kids, which I think is the hardest job in the world. And I never did it. And before we had children, I knew I wouldn't do it. But, you know, their partners will come home and they will literally be yelled at because, you know, there's toys everywhere and dishes haven't been done and my dinner's not ready yet. Like, I know we're talking, that sounds like the fucking 50s. No, it's 2022 and those sort of conversations still happen. Somebody comes home, they get a beer out of the fridge, they sit down, where's my dinner? Why is this house a mess? Like, seriously? Fuck off.
I think
But
there are some deeper issues there.
Oh, absolutely. But what I'm trying to say is that, like, this is the pillars, and the environmental pillar can be a trigger for so many people for so many different reasons. It is probably the most controllable out of them all. And so I think it is one where you can take back power, but you have to, if you are in a setting where there's more than one of you, you don't live by yourself, you need to be considerate of the people who are around you and try to keep lines of communication open. And, you know, it's a whole different podcast because, you know, we talk about, you know, you have teenagers and they come in, they dump their stuff and they go upstairs and lock themselves in the bedroom. Their bedroom's a mess, blah, blah, blah. Parents want, you know, they're yelling at them, pick up your stuff, blah, blah. But are we actually considering what that person is going through in that moment at that time? Because I don't think we do. So we use our environmental pillar a lot as an excuse in the way we communicate to each other. Whereas I think we can really change that in being aware, being self-aware of what we need in our environment, communicate that, but also ask the people we live with what feels good for you in an environment, and actually use the opportunity for dialogue to really get on the same page instead of using the environment as the excuse to treat each other like shit.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's like a really key, I think, place for me at the moment.
I feel that hardcore at the moment. Like, I'm living in an environment at the moment with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different adults. Different, like very different. We've got some people who are more rigid on the cleanliness than me. We have some people who are completely the opposite. So when you are in a space like that, you know, perhaps
shared accommodation,
you know, maybe you're young and you're moving out, you know, ultimately your space you have total control over, right? It's your room. You can have it however you like it, but you have to be able to have those open, honest conversations and have enough self-awareness to realize that they may not want to do things exactly how you want to. Coming to that compromise in the middle, and being able to respectfully communicate what you need in an environment too. Rather than, as I said before, letting that resent build up. Like, my mother, bless her heart, but she loves to do my washing. And I made it very clear that when I moved back in there, I was like, Mum, I love you. I appreciate everything you do for me. But, like, my stuff is my stuff. You know, when my kids are here, like, I appreciate your help, but like, I want to be the one to, you know, do the things that a father should be doing for them unless I ask for your help. And by nature, you know, it took a few goes when Mum would throw a load of washing on when she thought it was getting towards the back end of the week. And I'm like, Mum, I do it on a Sunday. I've literally designed it so it's a Wednesday and a Sunday. You know, she's an everyday type of washer, like, you know, small load a day. But because we were able to have those conversations and I was able to say, like, I appreciate this, but, like, this is important to me. I need to do these things. This is my responsibility. We got to a place where it doesn't happen anymore. And in the past, I probably would have, like, bit my tongue, and then she would have bit her tongue, and there would have been all this, like, resent bubbling under the surface and this passive aggressiveness, when you can just lay it all out on the table straight away and hopefully move through it way quicker and way easier. So that communication is so important. But what can you do if you are in an environment where that communication is hard?
You've got to analyze yourself first. You've got to be self-aware, and that comes with asking yourself the tough questions and taking responsibility. So, you know, it's not about, just looking at what everybody else is doing wrong. It's, this is my expectation, but why do I need this expectation? What do they actually need? And so I think it's really, you can't go into a crucial conversation or a really safe dialogue without actually understanding what you're asking for and what you need and why you need it. But in that conversation, also saying, I understand you live here too. What do you need? This is not just about what I need, but what do you need? But that needs to come proactively from you, not you demanding everything from the teenagers you live with or from your partner.
Yeah, and I think when people feel that, when you come at them and you say, this is what I need, but also what do you need, it takes that blaming and attacking out of it, and people sort of generally nervous system will calm back down, like, okay, like, we're a we here, it's not just I and you, we're working together on this. But as you said before, like, it's so easy for us to just go on the attack because we want our environments in certain ways and just butt heads with people all the time.
I can recall from my share house days in my 20s and just going at it with, this is the way I like it and you're not doing it that way. And it was very